But I'm delighted to welcome tonight Adam Graves from the New York Rangers, who's going to be providing some insight into concussions in professional sports. Just briefly, Mr. Graves returned to the Rangers in 2005 in a dual role that uses his myriad abilities in both on and off the ice. And in this capacity, he worked with the club's hockey personnel to advance the development of key Ranger perspectives while assisting the development and execution of the organization's many community outreach programs, as well as marketing and sponsorship initiatives. In reading his bio, he's been very involved in providing education. He's dedicated to the community, safety in sports. I am honored that he's taken the time to be with us tonight and to share his perspective. So, Mr. Graves, I welcome you to the podium. And hopefully they'll look at you and not what's up there. Thanks so much. Oh, you know what? Let me give you this. Just clip that onto your tie. Thanks
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's great. My arms aren't long enough anymore, so got to throw my glasses on. Certainly, I'd like to start just by saying thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be here tonight. And unlike everyone else that is going to be speaking here, and certainly on something that is so important, as a father, as a coach, as someone that has been involved in sport, involved with kids my entire life, there's nothing more important than a child's mind and a person's mind, an adult's mind, and someone that, as they move through life, there's nothing more important than collecting your thoughts and being able to do things that we take for granted on a daily basis. So for me to be standing up here, I just want to say thank you. I think as a professional athlete, sometimes people go out of their way to say, hey, you're a hero, or you do these special things. And I always try to remind people that as an NHL player, I played for 17, 18 years, played a little over 1,000 games, probably close to 1,200 games, some of them good, some of them bad. But in essence, all I did was follow a little black piece of rubber around the ice. And it was entertainment. But the people that are here tonight, we have, most importantly, we have a lot of parents, but we also have coaches, we have trainers, we have doctors, we have experts, people that have dedicated their lives to taking care of people and making their lives better. I have 3 kids myself. My youngest son is sitting here. There's nothing more important than the health of my children. And for people to dedicate themselves and be out here tonight and allow me to come in and speak. And I know enough to know what I don't know. And I am not an expert in this field. I can talk about experiences. I can talk about concussions and getting prepared for today and trying to prepare myself. I was quick to realize, although I had a pretty good idea being around kids, that I don't know a lot about concussions. And so I figured I would start by talking like a layman. So if I was a layman and I went to the dictionary, what is a concussion? And I found the definition is a complex pathophysiological process affecting the brain, induced by traumatic biomechanical forces. Wow, what does that mean? Direct blow or impulsive forces transmitted to the head. Yeah, I understand that. I played hockey for better part of 35 years. So I know that very well as football. Took a little bit of boxing, played soccer as a kid for probably close to 12 years. So I understand that. And it typically results in rapid onset of neurological impairments. Concussion is functional, not structural. Again, I'm not quite sure what that exactly means. It may or may not include loss of consciousness. I get that. I watch SportsCenter every night up in Canada. We have 3 or 4 sports channels on our cable network. And it's not identifiable from the standard imaging, CT or MRI. That's scary. I've had both my shoulders pop out of joint. I've had separated shoulders. I've had torn meniscus in my knee. I've broken my hand in about 3 or 4 different places. I've had my nose broken 8 or 9 times, all my teeth knocked out, ears cut in half, over 300 stitches in my face. But I knew when there was an injury in those cases. I've had back surgery, L4, L5, in my back 18, 20 years ago. Pretty cut and dry. You know when you're injured, you know what type of an injury it is. I went to go see one of our players this past Saturday in Montreal. I was in New York Thursday, Friday, flew up to see a young gentleman that we had drafted 2 years ago. He's coming out of junior, plays for Baie-Comeau up in the Quebec Hockey League. Went to see him play. First period, played 3 or 4, maybe 5 shifts into the game. Got into a little bit of a tussle, went into the boards awkwardly with his hand. He's done for the game. Went and talked to him after the game. I said, "What's up with your hand?" Thought it was a broken finger. I said, "Can you please give me a ring later in the week?" Really great kid. Calls me up, says, "Mr. Graves," says, "I have a broken finger." I said, "Well, how long is it?" He said, 6 to 8 weeks, but I think I can be playing in 4. Concussion isn't that simple. There's no timetable. And that's why a lot of what I'd like to talk about here is questions, because I have a lot of questions. I have questions as a coach. The first thing I did when I first retired up in Canada is I went and got my level 1 and 2 coaching so I could get on the bench with my kids and get on the bench with other kids. And with the Rangers, we have our hockey schools every summer. We have both kids programs, teen programs, adult programs. We try to put hockey sticks in and try to teach the right way to play the game and being respectful. I looked in, I saw some of those stats that were up there, those scary stats of thousands of people a year die from brain injuries, to the hospitalizations, to people going to emergency, over 1 million a year. And that's not just from hockey or sports, that's everything. I remember as a kid going out and playing foot hockey outside up in Canada. Yeah, there's snow and ice up there, and I can remember banging into snowbanks and running around and not a worry in the world. I can remember riding my bike and going on trails and my head bopping back and forth, being on a trail bike. And up until probably 2-3 years ago, I didn't give it much thought. I didn't give it much thought when I was playing hockey, and fortunately for me, I wasn't an overly skilled guy, so I didn't transport the puck or carry the puck a lot between the blue lines. And for that very reason, I didn't get hit. I didn't get hit very much at all, if at all, in open ice. Unlike some of the other players that were very skilled, they were transporting the puck a lot. The extent of my game was more dump the puck in and run into the end boards. And if I hit someone, that was great. If I missed them, I didn't very often hit my head, but I certainly, a lot of impact, and my body was going all over the place. Which makes me think now, do I actually have to hit my head to have a concussion? Or is the whiplash effect, or just the impact of body on body, is that something that I should be worried about? I grew up in Toronto. My dad was a policeman. My mom was stay at home. We had foster kids growing up, and we spent every day out in the driveway or out in the street playing road hockey. And when we were practicing, getting ready for practice on Saturday or Sunday, the game for me was about taking wrist shots and in the driveway and just working on my skating. It wasn't a lot of, stick handling and a lot of focused on, let's say, over-focused as it is now, where, and I find this unfortunately with my kids, because I'd like my kids to do a little bit of everything so it's balanced. And that's not just sport, that is everything, from theater to expanding their horizons, to scholastics, to getting involved in different clubs at school. But I also find that nowadays, if you want to play a sport or you want to do something, that the focus is that's all you can do. And I find that sometimes it's a little scary as far as the balance is concerned. And we talk about athletes now with 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15-year-old athletes with nutritionists, with personal coaches that they see. So on Monday they have a practice, on Tuesday they have a skating practice and a personal coach after school, on Wednesday they have their team practice, on Thursday they have a game, on Friday they have a game. Every day is spoken for, and it's all about getting better and getting better and getting better. And there isn't a lot of balance. And at the same time, it's also with this skill development, it's teaching kids the game a little bit different than we were taught growing up. And I say that because when you look at the game today and you see some of the injuries that take place, it's not only the aggressor that is creating the impact, but also, unfortunately, the player that is being hurt or injured on the play is not protecting themselves. So it's a combination of both. The game's never been faster. The guys have never been bigger, never been stronger, never been better prepared. But at the same time, when I was a kid, and I'll never forget this, my dad always had a rule. He said, whenever you're close to the boards, and you have to picture this, if this is the boards, he said, you can never turn your back on the boards, ever. It was like the golden rule, never turn your back on the boards. And you might see that 10, 12 times in a game now, with the assumption that no one's going to hit you. And for a while there, probably about a decade ago, they used to put stop signs on the back of the kids' jerseys. I'm sure people have seen that before, where they had stop signs. So if you're skating in, you see someone with their back on to the boards, you know with a stop sign, it's a gentle reminder not to hit someone. That's all well and fine. I think that is actually fantastic, but I also think that you have to be taught that if you're going to do that, you might want to be against the boards or with your stick, because there's so much skill development with sticks. Guys make a play, and because they're so focused on that, they're not as aware sometimes as they used to be, or they don't use their stick to protect themselves. And I don't mean bring it up here where you're trying to hurt someone. I'm just talking about bringing the stick across the body to protect yourself. Again, as the game has changed, some of that has gone to the wayside. And I think it's also contributed. You talk about coaching and preparation. Talk about speed, the back pressure. I can remember 20 years ago, Wayne Gretzky would go down the wing, he'd get inside the blue line, and he'd spin around, and then he'd wait for all the rest of the players to come, and then he'd make a nice pass. And why Gretzky was because he was just so brilliant, saw the game and read the game. Now, with that back pressure, there's not nearly as much time. Although, I will say that he was that brilliant that even in today's world or today's game, he would find a way to put those kind of numbers up. He was just that type of player and that type of man. But with that back pressure and with that speed, there's no room. There's no room on the ice at all. And I think about, watching games. Do I enjoy it? I absolutely love it. I was at the Garden last night. I see every one of the Rangers games. I see probably 150 games a year. Love watching hockey. The one thing I don't like is I don't like to see kids get hurt. I don't like to see, and I don't want to say that the Rangers are kids because they're young men, but to me they're kids because I've been removed from the game for about a decade, and certainly a lot of these kids are a couple decades younger than I am, so I call them kids, but young men playing. You never want to see anyone get hurt. The respect in the game. I saw a great example of something that for me represented something that kids need to be taught, not only from their coaches and from their teachers and from the people that they look up to for guidance, their parents, and the people that love them, that are surrounding them, to play fair and make sure that they are taking not only their best interest at heart in being safe, but really creating an environment where you're safe with the players that you're surrounded by, depending on what sport you're in. That happened probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago in a Ranger game, and I'm probably going to delve into an area where people go, fighting. But Ryan Callahan is the captain of the New York Rangers. He's not a fighter by any stretch. He's a heart and soul guy, blocks shots, body checks, clean, hard nose. He's everything you want in a hockey player. He comes back to the net. Someone had dug for a puck, I think, into Henrik Lundqvist, the goaltender, and he took exception to it. They dropped the gloves and started wrestling around a little bit, and then for whatever reason, his shoulder kind of half popped out. And you could see he said something to a fellow that played for the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Philadelphia Flyer player had him in a vulnerable position, and then as soon as he knew he was hurt, you saw his arms go up like this. Is fighting something that I'm here to talk about? No. But the point is that he didn't want to hurt him. He was in a vulnerable position, and he was in a position where he could have hurt him, and that is a type of respect. And I'm not talking about fighting. I'm just talking about the mentality of teaching the kids from a young age that it's the journey. And I've said this before when you talk about a coach. I say you have to really understand the privilege, even a teacher to that extent, but a teacher is so much wider and more encompassing, of course, because you have these kids all day and you're covering so many different subjects. But certainly coaches, I say that some of these kids, all these kids, it doesn't matter whether it's soccer, hockey, baseball, any sport, they love it. That is their passion. And when they're involved in that, their focus is never higher than it is at that particular time. So everything that you say to those kids is going to stay with them. So when that child is ready to put their head on the pillow at night, the last 10 minutes before they go to bed, you know what they're going to be thinking about. They're not going to be thinking about, hey, I've got a math test tomorrow and I better start thinking about what I'm going to do. Or they're thinking about hockey. They're thinking about baseball. They're thinking about what the coach told them. And once you like that message to be something that will stay with them, like a capsule, because life is all capsules, you know, where you're reinforcing the right message. And then when you go home, it's being reinforced. And it's not about the end game. It's not about playing in the NFL or the NHL or Major League Baseball or MLS or what have you. It's the journey. I talk about my own kids. This is scary. Concussions. My daughter, 16, she's now 17. This was last year I was coaching her. She's playing in the game, and she's actually going to be 18 this summer, and she's going to university next year. We've been going through that whole process. But I'll take you back 18 months ago, and she was in a game, and I was on the bench opening up a gate, and she turned around. She started from the blue line in. She went to turn like her dad, except probably a little better skater. She turned just to go backwards to deflect the puck that was coming from the blue line. And another young girl accidentally caught the back of my daughter's skate with her stick, and she went back and hit the back of her head. And my whole, you talk about, and I say this, you talk about stress. There's no stress in life greater or more encompassing than when something happens to your child, or there's something involving your child, or something involving your young one. And I'll never forget, because I think she did suffer a concussion, and at the same time it's scary because I've never heard her scream and cry like that before. And the first thing I did, because I never really got in tune to it that much, other than err on the side of caution, defer to people that are experts. And I said to Madison right away, because there is no end game for her other than her health and her future, was if the doctor says it's going to be 4 weeks, I'm telling you, it's going to be 8 weeks. You're not playing, but at the same time, beyond treating the concussion, I also said, Madison, from now on, as a rule, I don't want you to go backwards once you get inside the blue line. For me, that wasn't a safe play. And it wasn't finding fault with her, it was to protect her in the future. Like most parents out there, there's a lot of questions that are unanswered. And people ask me, even at the National Hockey League level, well, when you played, because I retired in 2003, didn't hear a lot about concussions, how many concussions. And I said, and this is just a somewhat of a generic statement, but I said, I don't know how many concussions there were back when I played, but for argument's sake, let's say for every 100 now there was, or for every 10 now, there was 6 then. Back then, 1 out of the 6 might have been diagnosed, whereas now 8 or 9 will be diagnosed. And I said that is the biggest difference, and that's why it's been pushed to the forefront, and that's why I think it's so important. I think about minor sports. From the time I started playing hockey when I was 4 years old. My dad was a policeman. He coached or refereed in an underprivileged hockey league. They were short on players, so we got some extra used equipment, put it on me, and stuck me on the ice. I don't think I touched the puck the first half of the year. I couldn't skate, didn't even move. But they didn't have to cancel any more games because I was out there playing, or so you were called playing. But from the time I was 4 till I was 14, I probably played on average maybe 50 games a year, so that was 500 games. From the time I was 14 till I turned pro, I probably played 100 games a year, so that's 1,000 games. And then in pro, I played close to 1,200 plus playoffs plus exhibition, I probably played close to 2,500 games. Now over the past 4 or 5, there's not a day that goes by where I don't think about, hey, all those times I ran into the boards, did I do something long term? Is my body makeup or my DNA, and I read like everyone else, am I more susceptible to the same trauma as someone else? How does that shake out for me? And I think that information, I think that having people like yourselves here focused and concentrating on education, treatment, and I think for a big part is just trying to be preventative and in protecting these young kids. Because I would say that before I turned pro, and those were the development years of my body, I played close to 1,000 games. I was the same kid in junior high up in Canada that was in football equipment, junior high, with 55 or 60 other kids, and there couldn't have been more than 2 coaches on the field. More than 2 coaches on the field, and I know we were playing football and banging into each other and everything else. That has changed. In hockey, we run a practice. You can't have any less than four coaches on the ice at any time. You have 2 trainers. You have a trainer on the bench. And I think we have to continue. And people say, oh, it's overkill, it's too much. More eyes. All we have to do though is we have to communicate and make sure that the messaging is concise and it's consistent and that we're sharing. And a big part of that is humility and understanding that we don't all have the answers. Certainly there's a lot of people in here that have a lot more answers than I do, but that's not saying much. But certainly, with the leadership that we have, making sure that the messaging goes out and we protect these kids and protect the environment and protect, what the young athletes, the kids in the playground, and kids in general, even on bikes, wearing helmets. That was never mandatory, now it is. I mean, just progressing. I say this when kids are first starting to learn how to play hockey. I said, please put a helmet on them. But not just a helmet, put on a mask and a chin strap. And it'd be great if there was a mouth guard, but if you don't have a mouth guard, at least the chin strap, or the face guard with the chin strap, buckled up and put on properly. At the NHL level, they change the helmets twice a year, both home and away, so they go through 4 helmets. And when there is a concussion, there's a whole protocol that they go through. In fact, I sat with Jim Ramsey, our medical trainer with the New York Rangers, and someone that has been a great friend for a couple decades. And I've always said that if I was ever in a lot of trouble on the ice, that the first person or the only person I would want to come to my aid and help me out is Rammer, and I trust his judgment and everything else. And talking to him, he talked about just the protocol and where it's gone from taking players no longer to a quiet room, but taking them off the playing surface. And it's not just the player, it's not just on the trainer. It can be the coach, it can be a teammate. I've heard different times. I played with Pat LaFontaine, just a fabulous man. Jeff Bukaboom, Mike Richter. Gentlemen that have post-National Hockey League career that in their careers were ended by concussion are unbelievably successful in all their different routes. Jeff Bukaboom's coaching in Hartford. Patty LaFontaine's involved in so many different entrepreneurial and charity work. Mike Richter finished up his education. He's has a fund that he's started up. And again, these guys, their careers were ended prematurely because of concussions. And talking to Rammer, it's because of these types of events that there is a protocol in the protection of the players and taking them off the field or off the ice and getting them into an area where you can ask those questions. And I was looking through some of those different questions that are asked, from what the score was to what day of the week it is, to simple questions that you would think, wow. I think to myself, I was very lucky. I know that I was never in a position where I couldn't answer those questions. But I also know that there's a lot of questions I don't have answers to along the way. So I don't want to overrun my time. I could go on and on. I'm very passionate, and certainly when it comes to to kids, we have to protect our kids and our future, and certainly by having a program like this and having the ability to have experts such as we do, and certainly at an establishment like this. I mean, I'm a proud New Yorker, although I'm from Canada. I lived in New York for close to 10 years. And my two youngest, my little guy there, he's from New York as well. And I love this city, and I love everything it does. And it's not just at Madison Square Garden either. It's for me, it's the journey, it's the people, and we have to keep the people as safe as possible, and that starts with the kids. So I thank you very much for your time.